In the heart of a sleepy town, where everyone knew each other's name and life moved at a peaceful pace, a tragedy unfolded that would shatter the illusion of safety. A young girl, just 10 years old, went missing without a trace. Her name was Lily Peters, and when she vanished from her quiet neighborhood, the search began as a race against time. But no one could have predicted the chilling twist that would follow. What seemed like a typical case of a missing child soon turned into a nightmare, revealing a web of dark secrets that no one saw coming. How well do we really know those we call family? And how quickly can trust break down when the unthinkable happens? As the investigation dug deeper, it became clear that the answers weren't just hidden in the shadows. They were buried within the very people closest to her. The camera pans over a peaceful neighborhood, with the hum of distant voices and a soft breeze rustling the trees. Children's laughter echoes in the background, contrasting sharply with the growing tension of the moment. A serene family photo of Lily fades in, her bright smile a painful reminder of what was lost. The music intensifies subtly, as the screen cuts to police officers walking down a narrow street, searching for clues. Then, the focus shifts to an empty playground, a chilling silence settling in, as if the absence of the child is more telling than any words could express. The camera holds a shot of Lily's empty swing, slowly swaying back and forth in the wind. But the biggest shock wasn't the disappearance. It was the shocking revelation of who was behind it. As the investigation unfolded, the truth hit like a thunderclap, sending ripples of disbelief through the community. And the most haunting question lingered. How could someone so close to her be capable of something so unimaginable? The courtroom would become the final battleground, where a family's darkest secrets would be exposed in the most unexpected way. A montage of the courtroom, tense faces of the jury, the whispers of the crowd, and the figure of a family member in the defendant's chair, their face obscured by shadows, only adding to the mounting suspense. The camera zooms in on the faces of those in the courtroom, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air as the stakes grow higher. On the evening of April 24, 2022, 10-year-old Lily Peters went missing from her home in the peaceful neighborhood of Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. It seemed like an ordinary night. Lily had been out riding her bike just hours before, something she did almost every day. But that evening, when her family went to check on her, she was gone. No signs of struggle. No traces of where she had gone or what had happened to her. The door to her room left ajar, her favorite stuffed animal sitting on her bed untouched. It was as though Lily had simply disappeared into thin air. The camera shifts to quiet suburban streets, darkened by the night, as police cars begin to circle the area. A small child's bicycle is left abandoned at the foot of a sidewalk, a chilling image that seems to mark the beginning of a story no one could have imagined. A snapshot of Lily's home, bright, welcoming, but now eerily still, fills the screen. Her family, devastated and frantic, immediately reported her missing. The town, gripped with fear, came together to help. Search parties scoured every inch of the neighborhood, and volunteers combed through nearby woods, hoping for any clue that would bring her home. What was supposed to be a hopeful search for a lost child soon turned into a haunting mystery that left everyone asking the same question. Where could she have gone? What happened to Lily Peters? As days passed, the search intensified, but no answers emerged. The case seemed to be slipping further and further away from the grasp of investigators, leaving more questions than ever. And then, just as hope was beginning to fade, a shocking discovery was made. In a secluded wooded area, not far from her home, Lily's body was found. But this discovery was only the beginning of a far more complex and unsettling story. It wasn't just a missing child case anymore. It was a family tragedy that would unravel a deep and dark mystery, one that no one was prepared for. The cause of death would be confirmed as blunt force trauma, but what shook the town to its core wasn't just the brutality of the crime. It was the shocking revelation of who was connected to the case. In the weeks that followed, new details would come to light, involving a person no one expected. A family member. Someone with a past. Someone who had been close to Lily. And that would be just the first of many unsettling twists. Lily Peters wasn't just any 10-year-old. She was a bright, curious girl with a love for adventure. Friends and family remembered her as someone who always had a smile on her face, someone who could light up a room with her laughter. She loved to ride her bike, play with her dog, and spend hours at the local park, doing what every child should do, enjoying the simple joys of life. But behind the sweetness of her innocence, there was something about her life that no one knew. A quiet undercurrent of tension, a family secret. And the more investigators looked into Lily's final days, the more they began to realize that not everything was as it seemed. The camera shows playful images of Lily, laughing and playing in the park, a reminder of her youthful spirit. It then shifts to darker, more somber shots of her bedroom, the untouched toys, the neatly made bed, the faint sense of absence in the room where she should have been. As the investigation began, detectives quickly learned that Lily's disappearance wasn't an isolated incident in the small town of Chippewa Falls. In fact, the more they looked into her family, the more disturbing the picture became. Lily had an extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, all of whom lived in the area. But it was one family member, in particular, that started to raise eyebrows. Her older cousin, 22-year-old Jake Patterson. Jake wasn't a stranger to the family. He'd been a part of their lives for years. But those closest to him began to notice that there was something unsettling about him, something they couldn't quite put their finger on. Jake had a troubled history. He'd been in and out of trouble with the law, small offenses at first, but over time, a growing sense that his anger could lead to something far worse. The people who knew him best described him as quiet, withdrawn, with an odd way of talking about his own feelings of isolation. On the night Lily disappeared, Jake had been in town, and his whereabouts were quickly scrutinized. But it wasn't until investigators checked the security footage from nearby stores that the full extent of his involvement started to come into focus. In the days before Lily went missing, Jake was seen in the area, lurking in the shadows, almost as though he was watching her. But it wasn't just his proximity that was disturbing. There was something far more unsettling about the timing of his movements. When detectives spoke to Jake, he appeared calm, almost too calm. There was no panic, no obvious signs of distress or confusion. Instead, he claimed he had no idea where Lily had gone, insisting that he hadn't seen her since a brief encounter at a family gathering days earlier. But something in his story didn't add up. His alibi was shaky. His timeline didn't match the evidence. And as more details came to light, it became clear that his connection to Lily's disappearance wasn't as innocent as he made it seem. It wasn't long before Jake was arrested and charged with Lily's murder. The confession came days later, a cold and emotionless admission that left investigators reeling. Jake told them that he had been watching Lily for weeks, learning her routines, following her every move. He explained that, on the night she went missing, he had lured her into the woods under the pretense of showing her something. But once they were alone, his behavior took a darker turn. His words, though vague, were chilling. "I just snapped." The details of what happened next are too brutal to recount in full, but what was clear from Jake's confession was the methodical nature of his crime. He wasn't acting on impulse. This was something calculated, something planned. He had waited for the right moment, and in that moment, he ended Lily's life. But what could drive a young man to do something so horrific? What had been brewing in the darkness of his mind? The investigation would go deeper, uncovering pieces of Jake's troubled past. But the most terrifying realization of all was that no one saw this coming. No one had noticed the subtle shifts in his behavior, the warning signs right in front of them, when ignored. But the story doesn't end there. Jake's arrest was just the beginning. As the trial neared, disturbing new details began to emerge. A darker motive hidden beneath the surface of his. What drove him to commit such an act? Was it a moment of madness? Or was there something far more calculated, more disturbing at play? In the next part of the story, we will unravel the mystery that still surrounds this case, a tale of family secrets, hidden motivations, and a tragedy that left everyone questioning everything they thought they knew. As we begin to uncover the chilling details of this case, it's impossible not to wonder, what was the true motivation behind such a tragic event? Was it just a cruel twist of fate, or was there something deeper hidden beneath the surface all along? Jake Patterson, a cousin, a young man who seemed to have everything ahead of him. What was it that pushed him to do something so unspeakable? Could the signs have been missed, or was there something about Jake's demeanor that no one could see until it was too late? What do you think? What drove Jake Patterson to commit such a crime? Was it purely his past, his struggles with isolation? Or do you think there could be other, unseen factors at play? Could there have been a buildup of emotions that no one ever realized? Or was it a moment of madness? Leave your theories in the comments below, because we want to hear what you think. Was this an act of anger, revenge, or something else entirely? And here's another question. Do you think Jake Patterson was guilty from the beginning, or were there clues that suggested he was only part of a much bigger story? If you had been following the case from the start, what would you have thought? Could there have been warning signs? Or was it something far more calculated, with a plan hidden in plain sight? I know we all want answers, and I'm sure you have your own theories. A flashback sequence begins, showing images of Jake in different places, at home, with friends, and at various moments of his life. Each frame is timed with questions, emphasizing the growing sense of uncertainty surrounding his actions. Now we want to get your opinion. Do you think Jake Patterson's actions can be explained, or is there something we're missing? Do you think he should be held fully accountable for his crime, or is there more to the story? Answer the poll above or share your thoughts below. Let's see where everyone stands on this. If you've been captivated by this case so far, don't forget to like this video. If you're fascinated by the twists and turns in the investigation and want more of these chilling stories, be sure to subscribe. We've got a lot more to uncover, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment. We'll continue to explore the unknown, uncover the truth, and reveal what's hidden beneath the surface of this case. After Lily's body was found, the case took an even darker turn. Investigators began questioning everyone close to her, but it was Jake's behavior that started raising even more questions. What did he know that he wasn't telling them? Could his calm demeanor really be hiding something more sinister? Lily Peters was more than just a name, more than just a victim of a heinous crime. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young girl who should have had her whole life ahead of her. And yet, just like that, she was gone. The people who loved her, the community that embraced her, were left with nothing but grief and disbelief. As we recount the details of the crime, it's crucial to remember one thing. Lily's life mattered, and the pain her family is still enduring, months after the tragedy, is unimaginable. What does it do to a family when a tragedy like this strikes? What does it feel like to have a child, someone you've watched grow, someone you've loved, taken so violently from you? The Peters family never expected this. No parent ever does. They trusted someone who should have been safe, someone who was supposed to protect their daughter. And yet, the person who they thought would be there for Lily turned out to be the one who took her away forever. For the Peters family, life will never be the same. And for Lily, the world she should have lived in, her future, her dreams, was all taken away in a moment of horror. You can only imagine what her parents must be feeling right now as they try to make sense of a reality they never asked for. How do you go on when something so incomprehensible happens? How do you heal from such a loss? The truth is, you don't. You carry the weight with you, and you try to live with it, but you never forget. The camera cuts to the empty streets of the neighborhood where Lily once lived, the peacefulness of it now seeming unsettling, as if the silence is trying to mask the underlying pain. But let's also take a moment to understand the psychology behind such a shocking crime. We need to ask ourselves, what could have driven Jake Patterson, a young man who was part of the family, to do something so horrific? Was it anger? Was it jealousy? Or was it the weight of his own struggles? Things he never spoke about? Things he hid from the world? It's easy to point fingers, but the truth is we often miss the subtle signs in people who are suffering. Jake Patterson had a past filled with trauma. He didn't just wake up one morning and decide to commit this crime. There was a build-up, a series of internal struggles that led him to that breaking point. And though nothing can justify what he did, it's important to try to understand the mind of someone capable of such violence. What was he trying to escape? What was he trying to prove? The complexity of his emotions must have been overwhelming. And in his desperation, he found himself on a path that no one saw coming. Perhaps Jake's actions were not just the result of his own struggles, but also a reflection of a deeper issue within the family, of trust, of closeness, and of how easily things can unravel when hidden feelings go unnoticed. The emotional scars left by Lily's death will never be healed, but it's critical that we try to understand not just the crime itself, but the inner turmoil that led to it. We'll never truly know what was going through Jake's mind the moment he made that decision, but one thing is certain: this tragedy, this loss, will ripple through the Peters family for generations to come. And as for Jake, we are left to wonder if there was ever any moment when he might have stopped himself, any warning sign that might have prevented this senseless act. As we reflect on the emotional weight of this case, we are reminded that behind every crime, there are real lives, real people left in the wake of violence. And while justice may be served, the emotional scars are something no verdict can heal. At the heart of this case is the story of a life cut tragically short. A young girl with dreams, with a future, with so much left to give. Her life ended by the hands of someone who was supposed to be a family member. Lily Peters was just 10 years old, and yet, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. For her parents, her friends, the community that loved her, the pain was unimaginable. But what makes this case all the more haunting is the question that will forever echo in the minds of those who followed it. How could someone so close, someone so trusted, be capable of such violence? Jake Patterson, a young man with his own troubled past, someone who had been a part of Lily's life for years, was the last person anyone would have suspected. Yet, as the details unfolded, the truth was undeniable. He wasn't a random stranger or an outsider. He was family. But could his actions truly be explained by anger and isolation alone? Or was there something deeper at play, something buried in the quiet moments, unnoticed by everyone around him? The more we uncover, the more questions arise. What pushed Jake to take the life of his own cousin? What was the real motive behind this shocking crime? The camera shows an empty family dinner table with a single chair pushed back. The light dims over the scene, the silence of what could have been a gathering now overshadowed by the grief of what's been lost. And while the trial may have brought some answers, it also left us with so many lingering questions. Even as Jake's confession was heard in the courtroom, there was an unsettling sense that we may never fully understand what led to such a horrific act. Was he truly acting alone? Could there have been outside influences that pushed him to the edge? And, perhaps most disturbing of all, could there be others like him? People hiding in plain sight, walking among us, concealing their darkest thoughts? This is a case that will haunt anyone who hears it, a reminder that evil doesn't always look like we expect it to. Sometimes, it's hidden in the quietest corners, in the places we least expect. And no matter how much we think we know someone, there are always things we might never see. But as we close this chapter, the mystery lingers. What drove Jake Patterson to do this? Was it truly just the culmination of his own broken world? Or were there deeper psychological forces at play? And what can we learn from this case moving forward? How do we recognize the signs before it's too late? In our next episode, we'll explore the aftermath of the trial. What happened to Jake Patterson after the court proceedings? And what shocking revelations came to light about his past? Stay tuned, because the story is far from over. If you've been following the case, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your thoughts, your theories, and your engagement matter, and we want to hear from you. What do you think happened? What was the truth that no one saw coming? As always, we encourage you to join the conversation in the comments below. What's your theory? And in the meantime, we'll continue to dig deeper into this case, searching for answers that still elude us. Don't miss what comes next. The journey into the unknown has only just begun.